Hey, 7th grade, I'm going to post this video walking through the review assignment for today. I'm hoping that you tried all of these on your own before watching this video, but this is here to help. The format of this assignment is going to look really similar to your quiz on Thursday. So make sure you are able to do these problems on your own by Thursday. So, starting with question 1, it says championship shirts sell for $22 each. And then there are a series of questions. So I drew a graph, which you are not required to draw, but I thought it might help some of you visual learners. So, question 1A says what 2 points must be on the graph for the quantities to be proportional to each other? So the two things that we know in order for a graph to be proportional is that the line must go through the origin. And of course the origin is at 0, 0. So 0, 0 has to be on any graph that is proportional. So 0, 0 is necessary. And if we follow our graph, and we can tell that one t-shirt costs $22, that means that this would be a straight line, a perfectly straight line, just like I drew. So the first point would be 0, 0, and the next point would need to be one t-shirt for $22. And those are the 2 points that must be on the graph for the quantities to be proportional, because we need to have our origin and we need to go through a straight line. And we can continue this graph if we wanted. Won't be perfect, but that's okay. 2 shirts for $44, 3 for $66, 4 for $88, 5 for $110, because it's $22 each. I have a moderately straight line going through it, so it's still proportional. So 1b says, what does the ordered pair 5, 110 represent in the context of this problem? Well, if you're looking at the point 5, 110, we can say that for 1b, 5, 110 represents 5 shirts for $110. And then for question 1c, how many shirts were sold if you spent a total of $88? Well, we could divide 88 by 22, because $88 divided by $22 a shirt. Or we can look at our table and see that you get 4 shirts for $88. But again, if you did not make the table, because you're not required to, you would need to divide $88 by $22, because it's $22 per shirt. Moving on to number 2. Jackie is making a snack mix for a wild party. She's using cashews and peanuts. The table below shows the relationship between the number of packages of cashews she needs to the number of cans of peanuts. So when there are 0 packages of cashews, there are 0 cans of peanuts, which means that this can be proportional. And then we see that for every 1 package of cashews, Jackie uses 2 cans of peanuts. So in order to write an equation, we need to figure out what the constant of proportionality is, which in this case is y divided by x, or 2 divided by 1, which means for 2a, we have y equals 2x, and we can say that y equals peanuts and x equals cashews. And for 2b, it says describe the ordered pair 12, 24 in the context of this problem. Well, 12 would be the x value, meaning 12 packages of cashews and 24 cans of peanuts, because the y value is always double the x value. Okay. Number 3, this is the one that goes all the way from A to I. Use this table to answer the following questions. So, number of gallons of gas, the number of miles driven. So, first question says, which variable is the dependent variable and why? This can be answered in a couple different ways, but I would say miles driven is dependent on how much gas you have. And so in this case, the y value is dependent. If I am told the x value, then I can figure out the y value. Then it says, what is the equation that relates the number of miles driven to the number of gallons of gas? So to find the equation, we need to find the constant of proportionality by doing y divided by x. So when I do 56 divided by 2, I figure out that k equals 28. So I can have the equation y equals 28x. And if I want, I can put my labels that says x equals gallons of gas, y equals miles driven. So 28 is our magic number for this problem. If the number of gallons of gas is known, how can you find, or can you find the number of miles driven? How? So we know that the constant of proportionality is 28. So the gallons of gas multiply by 28 to get the number of miles driven. And the opposite of that says, if the number of miles driven known, can you find the number of gallons of gas used? Well, we can divide by 28, or you can multiply by 1/28. Most of you will just divide by 28, but dividing by 28 and multiplying by 1/28 is the same. So for 3e, how many miles could be driven with 15 gallons of gas? So we're multiplying 15 gallons times 28. That will give us 420 miles. 3f, how many gallons of gas are used when the car has been driven 168 miles? So we're doing 168 miles divided by 28. And that will equal 6 gallons. How many gallons of gas are used when the car has been driven 17 miles? So that means we're doing 17 miles divided by 28. And when we are dividing two numbers, we can look at that as a fraction and just say that equals 17/28 of a gallon, because that does not simplify to a whole number. How many miles have been driven when half a gallon of gas is used? So we're doing 1/2 times 28. So half a gallon multiplied by 28 miles per gallon. That will equal 14 miles, because half of 28 is 14. Our last one, how many gallons of gas have been used when the car has been driven for half a mile? So now we're doing 1/2 divided by 28, or we can say 1/2 times 1/28. That's going to equal 1/56 of a gallon. So that is the time when multiplying by a fraction might be easier than dividing by a whole number. A lot of you will have decimal answers. Like for 3i, you would have done 1, divided by 56 to get a weird decimal, but fractions are typically easier. All right, question 4. To make 5 dinner rolls, 1/4 cup of flour is used. How much flour is needed to make 1 dinner roll? So, if we have, for 4a, if we have 5 rolls for 1/4 cup, in order to find the amount of flour for 1 roll, we're going to divide both of these by 5. So that'll leave us with 1 roll equaling 1/4 divided by 5. And we can think of that as 5 over 1. So we're going to make that 1/4 times 1 over 5, which equals 1/20th of a cup. So 4a is 1/20th of a cup. 4b. How many cups of flour are needed to make 4 dozen dinner rolls? So we already know it's 1/20th of a cup per roll. And we're going to multiply that by 48 because we know that each dozen has 12. 12 times 4 is 48. So 1/20th of a cup times 48 dinner rolls. That, of course, will equal 48 20ths, which simplifies to 2 2/5 cups. And 4c, this is a trickier one. There's a few different ways you can do this. It says, how many rolls can you make with 3 3/4 cups of flour? So what we can do is we can take that 3 3/4 cups and we can divide it by the amount of flour it takes for 1 roll, which is about 1/20th. So that's going to convert to 15 over 4 times 20 over 1 is equal to 300 over 4, or 75 rolls. So again, we are still multiplying and dividing by fractions and mixed numbers. Make sure you watch the mixed numbers review again if you're still struggling with these skills. Okay, 2 more problems, but they are long and tough. Complete the following tables when given a ratio. A baker uses 2 cups of milk for every 5 cups of flour. So we're going to need to find our equations first. So we're going to highlight. Hopefully we're going to highlight. There we go. Oh. We're highlighting the row of whole numbers, because that is the row where we're going to find our equations. So we see that x equals 2, and y equals 5, and z equals 7. So in order to find the missing values, we're going to come up with some equations. So we have 2 equations for x. We can say that x, which is 2, and y is 5. So x is going to be 2/5 of y. And we can see that x equals 2 and z equals 7. So x equals 2/7 of z, because 2 is 2/7 of z. So we can multiply a y value by 2/5 to get x, and a z value by 2/7 to get x. Next set of equations, we can see that y equals 5 and x equals 2. So y equals 5/2 of x, and Again, y equals 5 and z equals 7. So y equals 5/7 of z. Last set, z equals 7 and x equals 2. So z equals 7 over 2 times x, and z equals 7, and y equals 5. So z equals 7 over 5 times y. And using these formulas, we're going to be able to find every single missing row. So we're going to do the top row first. We know that x equals 3/4. So we're trying to find y and z. So the two equations that we're going to use for the top row would be the one that tells us what y equals if we know x, and the one that tells us what z equals if we know x. And in this case, we're going to replace both of these x's with 3/4 because that is how many cups of milk we have. Okay, so y equals 5 over 2 times 3 over 4. That gives us 15 over 8, or 1 and 7/8. I'm going to type that in, 1 and 7/8. Then we have 7 over 2 times 3 over 4. Which equals 21 over 8, and that's going to be equal to 2 and 5/8. And if you added up the x and the y value, that would give you the total of the z value. Okay, moving on to row 3. This time it gives us the y value, and we need to find the x and the z value. So the two equations that we are going to use are right here and right here. This is for row 3. And we know that y is equal to 5.5, or we can write that as 11 over 2. So x equals 2/5 of 11 over 2. So we're going to say 2 over 5 times 11 over 2, which equals 22/10. Simplifies to 11/5. That equals 2 and 1/5. We have 2 and 1/5. And then for the z value, it says z equals 7/5 times y. So we're doing 7 over 5 times 11 over 2, which is getting us 77 over 10, which equals 7 and 7/10. So you can see that if you can multiply fractions, if your math facts are strong, these do not take forever, even on a tablet and erasing. Okay, fourth row, we have z equaling 13. So the equations we're going to use are going to be x equals 2/7 of z, y equals 5/7 of z. So we have for x value 2/7 times 13, that equals 26 over 7, which equals 3 and 5/7. So I'm going to put in 3 and 5/7. And for the y value, I'm going to erase later, we have 5 over 7 times 13 over 1. That equals 65 over 7. That's going to equal 9 and 2/7. Again, we can always check these by adding up the x and the y value to make sure that they equal the z value, which in this case it does. Okay, row 5, y equals 10. which means we know our y value. We're trying to find x and z. So we're using x equals 2/5 of y and z equals 7/5 of y. So we're going to do 2/5 of 10, which equals 20 over 4, which equals 5, which equals 5. Sorry, does not equal 5. Hopefully you found that mistake, because we know 5 times 1 is actually going to be 5 today. Throw that tricky math. Equals 4. So it still equals 4. And we can either add up the x and the y value, or we can still show our multiplication. We can do 7 over 5 times 10 over 1, which equals 70 over 5, and that simplifies to 14, which is great because 4 plus 10 does equal 14. Last row, x value equals 6 3/4, which means that they give us the x value and we need to find the y and the z value. So we're going to use y equals 5 over 2 times x, z equals 7 over 2 times x. 6 3/4 is going to be the same as 27/4. So we're going to do 5 over 2 times 27 over 4. 5 times 27 is 135, and 2 times 4 is 8. We're going to convert that to a mixed number. We know that 8 can go into 135 16 times, and that would equal 128. So there are 7 left over. So that's going to be 16 7/8. And for our last one, instead of 5 over 2, we're doing 7 over 2. 7 over 2 times 27 over 4. 7 times 27 is 189, right? 7 times 20 is 140. 7 times 7 is 49. Add those together, you get 189. We're going to divide that over 8. 8 can go into 189 times 23 times, because 23 times 8 is 184, which means we have 5 left over out of 8. So 23 5/8. And if we added up 6 3/4 plus 16 7/8, we would get 23 5/8. All right. Last table. We're going to be focusing on our whole numbers. Hope highlighting proven difficult for me. Okay, we are focusing on the 1, 4, and 5 because I cannot highlight. So we're focusing on the whole number. We're going to write our equations just like we did up here. We see that x has a value of 1 and y has a value of 5. So x equals 1/4 of y. X is equal to 1. Z is equal to 5. So x is 1/5 of z. We see that y is equal to 4 and x is equal to 1. So y is 4 times x. And y is equal to 4. Z is equal to 5. So y equals 4/5 of z. Last one. Z is equal to 5 when x is equal to 1. So z is 5 times x. And z is equal to 5 when y is equal to 4. So z is equal to 5/4 of y. Hopefully writing these equations is becoming very simple for you. Okay, top row, x is equal to 2/3. So we are going to be using these two equations to figure out what y and z are. So to find y, we're doing 2/3 times 4, which equals 8/3, or 2 2/3. And to find z, we're multiplying 2/3 times 5, which will be similar. Oh boy, 2/3 times 5/1, that equals 10/3, or 3 1/3. If we added up x and y, we would get z. All right, third row, they tell us that the y value is 5 2/3. So we need to figure out the x and the z value. So y is 5 2/3, so we know that x is going to be 1/4 of y, and z is going to be 5/4 of y. We're going to convert 5 2/3 into an improper fraction. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 is 17, so we're having y equals 17/3. To find the x value, we're doing 1/4 of that, which is 17/12. That simplifies to 1 5/12. And for our z value, we have 5/4 times 17/3 gives us 85/12. We know that 12 can go into 85 7 whole times, because 7 times 12 is 84. That'll leave 1 left over. That'll be 7 1/12. And our last row of the assignment, we are told that z is equal to 12. So we know the z value, and we are trying to find the x and the y. So we can say that, oh, well, x is 1/5 of z, y is 4/5 of z. So we're going to say x is 1/5 of 12, which equals 12/5, which equals 2 2/5, which is great, nice and easy, as long as I can type. That is 2 2/5. And our last hurrah, we're doing 4/5 times 12, which equals 48/5, and that simplifies to 9 3/5. We are going to put that here and be done with our assignment. Watch this video, practice with your mixed numbers and your fractions, practice your math facts. This is what your quiz is going to look like on Thursday. Good luck.